Thank you for joining us. With the news on QTV, my name is Diana Sumbwe. We take a look at stories making headlines. The Lusaka Magistrate Court has convicted a police officer and sentenced him to 6 months imprisonment with hard labor for corruption. The Ministry of Justice says it will go ahead with the tabling of the Constitution Amendment Bill in Parliament should the national dialogue process delay. And economist Luvinda Habazoka has told off mining companies to stop bullying government on taxation. And now the news in detail. The Lusaka Magistrate Court has convicted a police officer and jailed him for 6 months with hard labor for corruption involving 5,000 kwacha. Akayombokwa Simuyonji of 36 of farm number 196 Mungwe Road, Lusaka West, was arrested by the Anti-Corruption Commission in May 2015 and charged with 2 counts of corrupt practices contrary to Section 19 Cap 1 as read with Section 41 of Anti-Corruption Act No. 3 of 2012. In the first count, it was alleged that on unknown dates but between August 2013 and December 2013, Simuyonji, being a public officer, namely a police officer under the Zambia Police Service, did corruptly solicit for 5,000 kwacha cash from Mpwekeleni Ndlovu and actually received 1,000 kwacha through Zoona money transfer as an inducement for himself to discontinue investigations into allegations of fraud and theft against the said Mpwekeleni Ndlovu, a matter or transaction that concerns the Zambia Police Force, which is a public body. In the second count, it was alleged that on unknown dates but between 18th October 2013 and 31st December 2013, Simuyonji, being a public officer, namely a police officer under the Zambia Police Service, did corruptly solicit 5,000 kwacha cash from Makosana Ndolo and actually received 400 kwacha through Zoona money transfer as an inducement for himself to discontinue investigations into allegations of fraud and theft against the said Makosana Ndolo, a matter or transaction that concerns the Zambia Police Force, which is a public body. On case to answer stage, the resident magistrate Humphrey Chitalu found the accused now convict with a case to answer on count 1 and put him on his defense and acquitted him on count 2. In his judgment, Magistrate Chitalu convicted Simuyonji on count 1 and sentenced him to 6 months imprisonment with hard labor effective 26 September 2018. This is contained in a statement made available to Q News by Anti-Corruption Commission Public Relations Manager Timothy Mono. The Ministry of Justice says it will go ahead with the tabling of the Constitution Amendment Bill in Parliament should the national dialogue process delay. Speaking at the Southern African Center for Constructive Resolution of Disputes SACOD and Frederick Herbert Steffog FES Discussion Forum in Lusaka, Ministry of Justice Director for Governance Charm Kalimbika has since urged the Zambia Center for Interparty Dialogue ZCID to expedite the process. Mr. Kalimbika says government wants to move away from perpetual constitution reviews, adding that 6 constitution reviews conducted since independence is too much for a country. He says government wants to come up with a constitution that will stand the test of time. Meanwhile, Mr. Kalimbika says government will conduct a referendum on the Bill of Rights with a human rights approach.
An arithmetic perspective, on average, had 1 constitutional review process every 9 years. And since we have attained independence, while the frequency of constitutional review in our country may, on the other hand, reflect our collective determination to pursue a desirable, durable constitution, no matter how long it takes. It does, on the other hand, rise to legitimate concern as to whether we shall perpetually be engaged in constitution review. You have seen that every 9 years, that is on average. And
Speaking at the same discussion forum, Civil Society for Poverty Reduction CSPR Executive Director Patrick Nshindano urged Zambians to take interest in governance matters. Mr. Nshindano says this will enable them provide checks and balances. And Mr. Nshindano has advised civil society organizations in the country to define their parameters. He observes that the trend by civil society organizations to have no particular agenda is robbing the people they claim to advocate for.
For you to measure democracy, one of the key measurements for democracy is a thriving civil society organization. That is one of the key indicators. Without a thriving civil society organization, that ultimately should indicate to you that there is a problem with with the state of democracy, and not necessarily with civil society. And it's important that that is appreciated. Because with a thriving democracy leads to a thriving civil society movement, both formalized or unformalized. But also the interest of civil society, at the core of it, is the empowerment of its citizens. Most of the time when you're talking about issues to do with checks and balances, this has mainly tended to be from a supply side of things, where I basically say, what are the laws that government has put in place, issues to do with judicial systems, courts, and so on. To what extent is the governance on the part of government being kind of pushed?
The annual rate of inflation for the month of September 2018 has dropped to 7.9% from 8.1%. Speaking at a media briefing, Central Statistical Office Acting Director for Statistics, Goodson Sinyenga, says this means that on average, prices of goods and services increased by 7.9% between September 2017 and September 2018. Mr. Sienga says Mr. Sienga says this has attributed to decrease in the annual rate of inflation to the base effect arising from the adjustment in electricity tariffs in September 2017. He adds that the month-on-month inflation rate for September 2018 dropped by 0.2%, indicating a decrease of 0.1 percentage points compared to 0.3 percentage points recorded in August 2018. And Mr. Sinyenga says Zambia's trade deficit increased by 109.7% from 829 million kwacha recorded in July 2018 to 1,738.2 million kwacha in August 2018. He explains that this means the country imported more than it exported in normal terms.
Between July 2018 and August 2018, the share of non-traditional exports increased from 24.8% observed in the month of July 2018 to 29.1% observed in the month of August 2018. And for a detailed breakdown of the various non-traditional export commodities, you can refer to the bulletin. You'll find a schedule, a table with these products. In terms of the exports by major category, product categories, most of our export items were made of intermediate goods. Between
Economist Linda Habazoka has told off mining companies to stop bullying government on taxation, reacting to a statement by the Chamber of Mines in which they are seeking to increase loss carryovers from 7 to 10 years and demanding the VAT refund arrears to be repaid. Dr. Habazoka says mines should stop holding government at ransom. He says mines want to extend the periods of declaring losses when they know that in a fiscal year they made profits but declare losses on technicality. Dr. Habazoka points that individuals who have put their houses on rent are being taxed by government regardless of whether they built their house using a loan or not, wondering why the mines should bully government on taxation. He says the country is not interested in the mines' projected increase in copper production to 1 million tons a year because the more they produce, the more the country loses out because government tax revenue is insignificant. Dr. Habazoka wonders how the mines can pay mineral royalty of 3.5% and then fail to declare corporate income tax despite the fact that they receive 700 million United States dollars in VAT refunds, 240 million United States dollars in electricity tariffs, and 60 million United States dollars in full subsidies. He says it's high time the mines came on board to help government raise resources. He states that it's a pity that every time government moves into correct the wrong, the mines start retrenching employees. Dr. Habazoka has reminded the mines that there are other investors watching on the terraces, adding that this includes the option of nationalizing non-profit posting mines. Government says the use of electronic tourism platforms has contributed to the increase in tourism inflows in the country in the recent years. In 2017, Zambia recorded 1,083,317 international tourist arrivals compared to 956,332 international arrivals recorded in 2016, representing a 13.3% increase. In a speech read on his behalf by Acting Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Tourism, Ruben Zulu, during the commemoration of the World Tourism Day, Tourism Minister Charles Banda said the increase in tourism inflows can be attributed to the introduction of e-visa services and e-marketing strategies, among other factors. Mr. Banda says Zambia will continue to encourage innovation and the use of ICTs in tourism in order to attain greater market awareness of the rich experience and satisfaction Zambian tourism can offer to tourists. He emphasized that information technology is one such area that is important for tourism as it helps to reduce the cost of doing business, enhances operational efficiency, and improves services and customer experiences. The minister has since called upon all key industry players to work together to create a platform for continued and sustained discussions on new strategies Zambia will need to take advantage of what the digital age offers for growth of the tourism sector in Zambia.
The use of e-tourism strategies and information and communication ICT platforms in the promotion of tourism is in line with the UNWTO key priority areas for results-driven management through innovation and digital transformation. In this regard, Zambia will continue to encourage innovation and the use of ICTs in tourism in order to attain greater market awareness of the rich experience and satisfaction Zambian tourism can offer to tourists. Over the past decade, tourism has continued to grow. For example, international tourist arrivals globally grew by a remarkable 7% in 2017 to reach a total of 1,322 million, according to the latest UNWTO World Tourism Barometer. During the same period, 2017, Zambia recorded 1,083,317 international tourist arrivals, compared to 2016, which had 956,332 international tourist arrivals, representing a 13.3% increase.
Former Transport and Communications Minister William Harrington has implored lawmakers to enact a law which will make it mandatory for the state to publish reports and recommendations of commissions of inquiry. Reacting to the extensions of the mandate of the Commission of Inquiry on Voting Patterns and Electoral Violence by President Edgar Lungu, Mr. Harrington said the Zambian taxpayer must not fund mere academic exercises such as Commission of Inquiries whose reports and recommendations are never made public. He says the Zambian taxpayer has a direct interest in the inquiries. Mr. Harrington states that the finding of the inquiries should not be left to the discretion of one person, which is the appointing authority. He notes that to date, over 8 years, the Patriotic Front government has ignored, neglected, or simply refused to publish the report on the Trafigura oil inquiry and the Roger Chongwe Commission of Inquiry on the 2010 Mongu riots, which a number of people lost their lives.
I'm of the considered view that the appointment of the commission was not necessary in the first place, and huge sums of money could have been saved on the Zambian taxpayer. The appointing authority could have saved the Zambian taxpayer, as I mentioned, huge sums of money if state machinery, the intelligence service, provincial commanding officers were directed to investigate and submit their reports on the 2016 pre-election violence in the country. In this regard, the Zambian taxpayer must not fund mere academic exercises such as commissions of inquiries when their reports and recommendations are never made public for the consumption and benefit of the Zambian taxpayer who has a direct interest in the inquiry. To date, after well over 8 years, the Patriotic Front government has ignored, neglected, or simply refused to publish the report on the Trafigura oil inquiry and the Roger Chongwe Commission of Inquiry on the 2010 so-called Mongo disturbances related to the Barosian Agreement of 1964, where many unarmed and defenseless Barosian nationals lost their lives. I wish to conclude by calling upon our legislators, our lawmakers, to enact a law which will make it mandatory for the state, the appointing authority, to make public reports and recommendations of commissions of inquiry. Publication, we cannot afford to allow that publication be left to the discretion of one person, the appointing authority, on such matters.
Meanwhile, Governance Elections Advocacy Research Services GEARS initiative has expressed dismay at the extension of the mandate of the Commission of Inquiry on voting patterns and electoral violence, thereby extending the time of delivering its report. Executive Director McDonald Chipenzi says that being one of the longest sitting public commission in Zambia, it was expected that the commission will nobly deliver the report than continuing to rake the country of its mega resources through sitting allowances. Mr. Chipenzi says it is clear that the commission may be turning the inquiry into an ATM. He states that under the prevailing economic circumstances, one expected that the president would have dissolved the commission of inquiry months back to reduce on any further wastage of public resources. Mr. Chipenzi says there is no need and justification for the inquiry to continue its business 2 years after its establishment. He wonders what new things the Commission of Inquiry will bring forth when the main cause of violence and the voting patterns are known. A tourist cyclist from Scotland has died after being hit by a vehicle which was being driven by an inexperienced driver in Kalomo. Confirming the development in a statement, Southern Province Police Commissioner Bonnie Kapeso said Kalomo Traffic Police recorded a fatal road traffic accident which occurred on 26th of September around 17:30 hours along Great North opposite Kalomo High School. Mr. Kapeso explains that involved was a Toyota Corolla registration number AJC 1396 which was being driven from north into the southern direction by Gift Mayoba, aged 30 years, of Macrimond compound in Kalomo. He explains that the accident happened when the driver of the motor vehicle, due to inexperience, failed to control his motor vehicle and hit two tourist cyclists who were cycling in the same direction. He has identified the tourist cyclist as Jane Gray, age 54, of Scotland, who sustained a deep cut on her forehead and died upon reaching Kalomo District Hospital. Mr. Kapeso said the other tourist cyclist, Julia Martin, aged 54, of England, sustained chest pains, a suspected fractured back, and some general body pains, and is currently admitted to Kalomo General Hospital. The body of the deceased has since been deposited to Kalomo District Hospital mortuary. Government says the rollout of communication towers in rural areas will effectively improve the investment climate, create employment, and provide a solid foundation for the socio-economic development of the entire nation. Speaking during the launch of the Zamtel Communication Tower at Kambukaiza in Petauke District, Minister of Transport and Communication Permanent Secretary Mishek Lungu said the development of the Information Communication and Technology ITC sector is of great importance to the promotion of national development. Mr. Lungu says the construction of communication infrastructure across the country is one of government's promises that it is proud of to see coming to fruition. He points out that in the 7th National Development Plan, ITC has been identified as a critical catalyst for socio-economic development as well as impetus for good governance. Mr. Lungu says government has recognized the ICT sector as one of the national priority areas in the drive towards the attainment of the 2030 goal of becoming a prosperous middle-income country. He states that government believes that the days when people experience loss of mobile signal are slowly coming to an end. The Permanent Secretary has since appealed to the people in the area to guard the communication tower with utmost jealousy. Speaking at the same launch, Zamtel Chief Executive Officer Sidney Mupeta disclosed that so far 320 towers have been constructed of the 1,009 towers, with 200 towers already operational. And Chieftainess Mwanjabantu of the Nsenga-speaking people, who spoke through a representative, January Tembo, has thanked Zamtel for putting up the tower, which she says will solve all the communication challenges the area has been experiencing. The African Civil Aviation Commission AFCAC annual plenary, during which Zambia was to assume the presidency of the commission, has been deferred from September to December 2018. Civil Aviation Authority CAA Director General Gabriel Lesa says the AFCAC preliminary will now be held from 1st to 5th December. Mr. Lesa, however, told QTV News that the venue of the plenary, which will be in 2 sessions, ordinary and extraordinary, still remains Livingstone. And Mr. Lesa disclosed that Zambia has now exceeded the 64% world coverage compliance to civil aviation safety standards by 14%. Mr. Lesa says the recent assessment by the European Aviation Safety Agency, EASA, rated Zambia's compliance to international safety aviation standards at 78%. He said the CAA therefore remains optimistic that the country will meet its 80% compliance target by the end of 2018.
So we are actually thrilled to see that the work of the ministry, the Civil Aviation Authority, and other aviation players has helped Zambia actually move to 78%. We'll soon be working with them on some of the areas they feel they can assist us to improve even much more. And our target of 80% by the end of the year seems to be likely to be met, because we're remaining with about 2% on those critical 5 areas. But we know that one of the areas which was not even looked at was AGA, in which we have already certified Kenneth Kaunda. Now the strides we've made in aerodromes and ground aids are quite tremendous, and we know that the points we'll get from that are quite high. So we are
MTN Zambia has contributed a total of 384,000 kwacha, inclusive of mobile satellite support and bulk SMS service, towards the Stanbic Bank Music Festival. Stanbic Bank will on October 5th and 6th hold its 5th music festival, which will host American musicians Brian McKnight and Joe Thomas, who will be supported by local artists. Announcing the mobile service provider's support to the music festival, MTN Zambia Chief Executive Officer Komba Malukutila said MTN is passionate about supporting the festival as it celebrates music and culture diversity. Mr. Malukutila says the music festival will also be a platform that will encourage Zambians to connect through arts. Therefore, the reason for MTN to deliver state-of-the-art mobile satellite for the duration of the festival.
Now, to deliver a truly remarkable festival, MTN is delighted to announce that we will be partnering with Stanbic this year. Our support for the festival, amongst others, will include a state-of-the-art mobile satellite that will be positioned at the festival to ensure that we can take those selfies, those videos, because people like Chanda and myself are coming to this festival to ensure that social media gets it on time. So we want uninterrupted connectivity, affordable connectivity, especially at the festival. And prior to this, we are also going to ensure that we reach as many Zambians through our SMS platforms, our social media platforms, our radio platforms, to just ensure that we maximize reach to these 6 million subscribers that we have on our network. So we are indeed going to support. We don't want anyone to be left out, so that we nicely Tebeta Joe and Brad McKnight, when they arrive, we must be there in full display. So we are actually, our sponsorship is to ensure that, you know, we reach as many Zambians as possible. The total value of our sponsorship to the bank will be 384,000 kwacha, inclusive of our mobile satellite and our bulk SMS service. Now to deliver.
And Stanbic Bank Director Corporate and Investment Helen Lubamba commended MTN Zambia for the gesture that will contribute to the successful hosting of the music festival.
And we have a fantastic, alongside our fantastic list of our local artists, they'll be sharing the stage with Brian McKnight and Joe. That's Joe Thomas. The event has grown over the last 4 years and is bound to be even bigger with the partnership such as the one that we are entering in today with MTN. We're happy to have MTN Zambia on board in sponsoring this prestigious event as a key sponsor. And we've got our acting CE here, Konga, who will talk more to that piece. I'd like to thank MTN for this partnership, and we look forward to the continued initiatives in which we can work together. This initiative is our way of creating a legendary platform that offers a unique artistic event that contributes to our culture and local tourism. Our customers and patrons can enjoy a premier event at their doorstep without having to travel abroad for similar quality events. Due to the diversity and quality of performances slated for this festival.
To end the news, we take a look at stories making headlines once again. The Lusaka Magistrate Court has convicted a police officer and sentenced him to 6 months imprisonment with hard labor for corruption. The Ministry of Justice says it will go ahead with the tabling of the Constitution Amendment Bill in Parliament should the National Dialogue process delay. And economist Luwinda Habazoka has called off mining companies to stop bullying government on taxation. On that note, we come to the end of the news. For me, Diana Sumbe, thank you.